Sometimes the most extraordinary transformations begin in the most ordinary places. A military mess hall filled with the clatter of metal trays, the smell of overcooked vegetables, and the tired conversations of soldiers might seem like the last place where a life could pivot from mediocrity to legend. But for Marcus Chen, a struggling recruit who couldn't even complete a proper push-up during his first week of training, this sterile cafeteria would become the launching pad for a journey that would take him from the brink of discharge to the elite ranks of the Navy SEALs. What started as a simple mistake, spilling coffee on the wrong person at the wrong time, would unleash a chain of events so unexpected that even the most seasoned military veterans would struggle to believe it. Because sometimes, when you think you've lost everything, when your dreams are crumbling faster than stale bread in your hands, the universe has a way of throwing you exactly the challenge you need to discover who you really are. This is the story of how one clumsy moment revealed skills that had been hiding in plain sight, and how the most unlikely candidate became living proof that greatness often wears the disguise of ordinary failure until the right moment strips it away. Marcus Chen had always been the kind of person who blended into backgrounds. At 22, he possessed the remarkable ability to walk through a room full of people and leave without anyone remembering he had been there. His thin frame, perpetually messy black hair, and habit of looking at his shoes when speaking made him practically invisible. This talent for invisibility had served him well through high school and his brief stint at community college, but it was proving to be a disaster in military basic training. The morning of September 15th started like every other morning at Naval Station Great Lakes. The alarm shrieked at 0500 hours, and Marcus jolted awake in his narrow bunk, immediately knocking his head against the metal frame above him. His bunkmate, a mountain of muscle named Rodriguez from Texas, groaned and rolled over without opening his eyes. "Chen, you better not be late for formation again," Rodriguez mumbled into his pillow. Marcus rubbed his forehead and slipped quietly out of bed. He had been late exactly once in the 3 weeks since arriving at boot camp, but somehow that single incident had defined him in the eyes of his fellow recruits. He was the guy who couldn't keep up, couldn't follow orders properly, couldn't even fold his underwear according to military standards. The truth was more complicated than anyone realized. Marcus wasn't naturally clumsy or particularly slow to learn. He was simply overwhelmed by the constant scrutiny, the shouting, the pressure to perform every action with military precision. Every movement felt magnified under the watchful eyes of the drill instructors, and the more attention he received, the more likely he was to make mistakes. He dressed quickly in the pre-dawn darkness, careful not to wake anyone else. The barracks were filled with the sound of deep breathing and occasional snores from 60 other recruits. Marcus had learned to move silently through these morning routines, a skill he had developed during childhood when his father worked night shifts and his mother battled chronic migraines. Being quiet had been a survival mechanism then, and it served him now. By 0545, Marcus was standing in formation with the rest of Company 194. Chief Petty Officer Williams, their drill instructor, stood at the front of the group like a statue carved from granite. Williams had 30 years of Navy experience etched into every line of his weathered face, and he had a particular talent for identifying weakness in new recruits. "Today we have physical fitness assessments," Williams announced, his voice carrying across the formation without effort. "Some of you will discover you're tougher than you thought. Others will learn they need to stop making excuses and start making improvements." Marcus felt his stomach tighten. Physical fitness had been his weakest area since arriving at boot camp. While other recruits had adapted quickly to the demanding exercise routines, Marcus struggled to complete even the minimum requirements. His push-ups were barely adequate, his sit-ups were painful to watch, and his running times were consistently among the worst in the company. The assessment began with push-ups, and Marcus positioned himself on the concrete with the rest of his division. The instructor called out the count, and Marcus pushed himself up and down, feeling the familiar burning in his arms after just 20 repetitions. Around him, other recruits powered through the exercise with relative ease, their breathing steady and controlled. "Come on, Chen!" shouted Petty Officer Martinez, one of the assistant instructors. "You're moving like you're underwater. Pick up the pace." Marcus tried to increase his speed, but his form deteriorated quickly. His arms shook with effort, and by the 40th push-up, he was struggling to maintain proper positioning. He could hear snickers from some of the other recruits, and the familiar heat of embarrassment crept up his neck. When the push-up portion ended, Marcus had managed 47 repetitions, barely meeting the minimum standard. He rolled onto his back, breathing heavily, while recruits around him seemed barely winded. Rodriguez clapped him on the shoulder. "Not bad, man. You're improving," Rodriguez said, though they both knew it was generous encouragement rather than accurate assessment. The sit-up portion went marginally better, with Marcus completing 58 repetitions in 2 minutes. His abdominal muscles burned, and sweat dripped into his eyes, but he had at least exceeded the minimum requirement by a few repetitions. The final portion was the 1.5-mile run, and this was where Marcus knew he would face his greatest challenge. Running had never come naturally to him, and the combination of physical exertion and performance anxiety made each step feel like he was wearing concrete boots. The group lined up at the starting line of the track, and Marcus positioned himself near the back, hoping to avoid the scrutiny that came with being in the front ranks. Chief Williams raised his stopwatch and shouted the command to begin. The pack of recruits surged forward, and Marcus found himself quickly falling behind the main group. His breathing became labored within the first quarter mile, and he could feel the familiar tightness in his chest that accompanied his anxiety about public performance. By the halfway point, Marcus was running alone, with the fastest runners already lapping him and the main pack well ahead. His legs felt heavy, and each breath seemed insufficient. The voice of Petty Officer Martinez echoed across the track. "Chen, you're running like my grandmother, and she's been dead for 10 years. The comment drew laughter from some of the recruits who had already finished their runs and were watching from the sidelines. Marcus felt his face burn with embarrassment, but he continued putting one foot in front of the other. Quitting wasn't an option, even though every fiber of his being wanted to walk off the track and disappear. As he rounded the final turn, Marcus could see the finish line ahead. His vision was slightly blurred from exhaustion and sweat, but he managed to maintain his shuffling pace. When he finally crossed the line, Chief Williams clicked his stopwatch and shook his head. 14 minutes and 37 seconds, Chen. You need to improve by over 2 minutes to meet the standard for graduation. Marcus nodded, too exhausted to speak. He walked slowly to the side of the track, his hands on his hips trying to catch his breath. The other recruits were already moving on to the next scheduled activity, their assessment completed successfully. "Hey, Chen," called out Recruit Stevens, one of the more athletic members of the company. "Maybe you should consider a different branch of service. I hear the Coast Guard has lower standards." The comment stung, but Marcus had heard worse over the past 3 weeks. He had joined the Navy with dreams of eventually earning his way into special operations, a goal that seemed increasingly unrealistic with each passing day. His recruiter had talked about the opportunities available to motivated sailors, but Marcus was beginning to understand that motivation alone wasn't sufficient. The morning continued with more training activities, including weapons handling and military protocol instruction. Marcus performed adequately in these areas, his attention to detail serving him well when the tasks didn't require physical prowess. He had always been good at following complex instructions and remembering detailed procedures, skills that had helped him succeed academically even when his confidence was low. During the lunch break, Marcus sat alone at a table in the corner of the mess hall, methodically eating his meal while reviewing his notes from the morning's classes. The mess hall was filled with the usual cacophony of conversation, laughter, and the clatter of metal trays on tables. He had grown accustomed to the isolation, finding that eating alone gave him time to process the day's lessons without distraction. As he finished his meal, Marcus stood up to return his tray to the cleaning station. The mess hall was crowded, with recruits moving in all directions as they finished their meals and prepared for afternoon training. Marcus navigated through the crowd carefully, his tray balanced in both hands. He was almost to the tray return when it happened. A recruit he didn't recognize stepped backward, suddenly bumping into Marcus and causing him to stumble. The movement sent his half-empty coffee cup flying, its contents arcing through the air in what seemed like slow motion. The coffee landed squarely on the uniform of a man sitting at a nearby table. But this wasn't just any man. Marcus realized with growing horror that he had just drenched a naval officer he didn't recognize. Someone wearing dress blues with ribbon bars that indicated significant experience and achievement. The mess hall seemed to fall silent around them, though Marcus knew this was probably his imagination amplified by panic. The officer stood slowly, coffee dripping from his uniform, and turned to face Marcus. He was older, probably in his early 40s, with graying hair and the kind of steady gaze that suggested he had seen considerable action. "I'm so sorry, sir," Marcus stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. "It was an accident. I didn't see you there. I mean, I saw you, but I didn't mean to." The officer held up a hand, stopping Marcus's rambling apology. He looked down at his coffee-stained uniform, then back at Marcus. For a moment that felt like an eternity. Nobody spoke. "What's your name, son?" the officer asked, his voice calm and measured. "Recruit Chen, sir. Marcus Chen." "Well, Recruit Chen, accidents happen, but your reaction to this accident is interesting." Marcus wasn't sure what the officer meant, but he sensed that his military career was probably over. He would likely face disciplinary action for damaging an officer's uniform, and this incident would certainly be reported to his drill instructors. The thought of calling his parents to explain that he had been discharged from the Navy for spilling coffee made his stomach turn. "Sir, I take full responsibility for the damage to your uniform," Marcus said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. "I'll pay for cleaning or replacement costs." The officer studied Marcus for another moment, then did something unexpected. He smiled. "Relax, recruit. It's just coffee, and this uniform has seen worse." The officer extended his hand. "I'm Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison, Special Warfare Development Group." Marcus had heard of DEVGR, though he knew most people called it SEAL Team 6. The realization that he had just dumped coffee on a Navy SEAL made him feel even worse about the situation. "Sir, I really am sorry about this," Marcus said, shaking the offered hand. "I can see that. But what interests me more is how you handled yourself just now. Most recruits would have either run away or started making excuses. You took responsibility immediately and offered to make it right. That says something about your character." Marcus wasn't sure how to respond to this unexpected praise. He had spent 3 weeks being criticized for his performance, and now an elite special operations officer was complimenting his character over a coffee spill. "Thank you, sir. I try to do the right thing, even when I mess up." "Good philosophy. Tell me, Chen, what brings you to the Navy?" The question caught Marcus off guard. He had expected anger, punishment, or at least stern disapproval. Instead, he was being asked about his motivations for military service. "I want to serve my country, sir, and I hope to eventually qualify for special operations." Lieutenant Commander Morrison raised an eyebrow. "Special operations? Have you researched what that involves?" "Yes, sir. I know it's extremely demanding, both physically and mentally. I also know my current fitness level isn't where it needs to be for that kind of training. Honesty about your limitations is good. But what makes you think you have what it takes for special operations?" Marcus paused, considering the question seriously. 3 weeks ago, he might have given an answer based on movies or television shows. But his experience in boot camp had taught him that special operations required more than just wanting to be elite. "I'm not sure I do have what it takes, sir. But I'm willing to find out. I don't give up easily, even when things get difficult." Morrison nodded slowly. Persistence is important, but special operations requires more than just determination. It requires adaptability, quick thinking, and the ability to perform under extreme pressure. As they talked, other recruits continued to move around them, returning trays and preparing to leave for afternoon training. Marcus was aware that this conversation was unusual, but he was too focused on the lieutenant commander's words to worry about the attention they might be drawing. "Sir, I understand that my current performance in boot camp doesn't suggest special operations potential," Marcus said. "But I believe people can improve with proper training and motivation." "That's true. But improvement requires more than just training. It requires understanding your strengths and learning how to apply them effectively." Morrison looked thoughtful for a moment, then seemed to make a decision. "Chen, I'm going to be observing training activities here for the next few days as part of a recruitment assessment program. I'd like you to participate in some additional exercises with me tomorrow evening after regular training hours." Marcus felt a surge of both excitement and terror. The opportunity to work with a Navy SEAL was incredible, but he was also worried about embarrassing himself further. "Yes, sir. I'd be honored to participate." "Good. Report to Gymnasium 3 at 1900 hours tomorrow. Wear your PT gear and bring a positive attitude. Morrison gathered his belongings and prepared to leave. Before walking away, he turned back to Marcus. "One more thing, Chen. That coffee spill wasn't entirely an accident, was it?" The question surprised Marcus. He thought about lying, but something in Morrison's expression suggested that honesty would be more valuable. "No, sir. I mean, the spill was accidental, but I noticed you before it happened. I was trying to avoid bothering you, which is probably why I wasn't paying enough attention to where I was walking." Morrison smiled again. Situational awareness is crucial in special operations. Sometimes trying too hard to avoid a problem creates different problems. Tomorrow we'll work on helping you see situations more clearly. After Morrison left, Marcus stood in the mess hall for a moment, trying to process what had just happened. He had gone from expecting disciplinary action to being invited for special training with a Navy SEAL. The other recruits around him continued with their normal routine, unaware that his simple mistake might have just changed the trajectory of his military career. As he walked back to his barracks, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced since arriving at boot camp: genuine hope. For the first time in 3 weeks, someone had seen potential in him rather than just inadequacy. He wasn't naive enough to think that one conversation would transform him into special operations material, but it was a beginning. That evening, as he lay in his bunk reviewing the day's events, Marcus realized that his coffee spill had taught him something important about opportunity. Sometimes the mistakes that seem most embarrassing can open doors that careful planning never could. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for the first time since arriving at boot camp, he was genuinely excited to face them. Marcus spent the entire next day in a state of nervous anticipation. Every training activity seemed to drag by slowly as he watched the clock counting down the hours until his meeting with Lieutenant Commander Morrison. His fellow recruits noticed his distraction during morning drills, and even Chief Williams commented on his unusual lack of focus. "Chen, your head seems to be somewhere else today," Williams barked during weapon assembly practice. "In combat, daydreaming gets people killed. Lock it down and pay attention." Marcus forced himself to concentrate on the task at hand, but his mind kept wandering to what Morrison might have planned for their evening session. He had spent hours the previous night trying to imagine what kind of exercises a Navy SEAL would use to evaluate potential, but his limited knowledge of special operations training left him with more questions than answers. During lunch, Rodriguez noticed Marcus picking at his food instead of eating. "You feeling okay, man? You've been weird all day." Marcus considered telling Rodriguez about his meeting with Morrison, but something held him back. Part of him was worried that talking about it would somehow jinx the opportunity, and another part was concerned about raising expectations that he might not be able to meet. "Just thinking about stuff," Marcus replied, which was technically true. "Well, think about eating your food too. You're going to need energy for this afternoon's obstacle course training." The afternoon obstacle course session was particularly challenging. Chief Williams had designed a course that combined running, climbing, crawling, and problem-solving elements. Marcus performed better than usual, though he suspected his improvement was more about distraction from nervousness than actual skill development. As evening approached, Marcus changed into his physical training uniform and made his way to Gymnasium 3. The building was quieter than usual, with most training activities concluded for the day. He found Morrison waiting inside, dressed in Navy PT gear that looked significantly more worn and practical than the standard-issue clothing worn by recruits. "Good evening, Chen. Ready to do some work?" "Yes, sir." Morrison gestured toward the center of the gymnasium, where he had set up several stations with different types of equipment. Marcus could see rope climbing stations, agility ladders, balance beams, and what appeared to be puzzle boxes scattered around the space. "Before we begin, I want to explain what we're doing here," Morrison said. "This isn't about testing your current physical capabilities. Your PT scores tell me everything I need to know about that. This is about understanding how you think, how you adapt, and how you respond to unfamiliar challenges." Marcus nodded, though he wasn't entirely sure what Morrison meant. "Special operations work isn't just about being stronger or faster than everyone else," Morrison continued. "It's about being able to think clearly under pressure, solve problems creatively, and adapt quickly when things don't go according to plan. Those are skills that can be developed. But first we need to see if you have the right foundation." Morrison led Marcus to the first station, which consisted of a rope climbing setup with multiple ropes of different thicknesses and lengths. Standard rope climbing techniques focus on upper body strength, Morrison explained. That works fine if you're strong enough. But what if you're not? What if you're exhausted, injured, or dealing with equipment that doesn't match your training? Marcus looked at the ropes, already feeling intimidated. His rope climbing abilities were among his weakest physical skills. I want you to get to the top of that rope, Morrison said, pointing to a rope that hung about 15 feet above the floor. But I don't want you to use standard military climbing techniques. I want you to figure out a different way. The instruction confused Marcus. He had been taught specific rope climbing methods in boot camp, and now he was being told to ignore that training. Sir, I'm not sure I understand. Are there alternative techniques you want me to use? That's for you to figure out. Look at the situation, assess your capabilities, and find a solution that works. Marcus approached the rope, his mind racing. He grabbed it and attempted a traditional climb, but his arms gave out after just a few feet. He dropped back to the ground, breathing hard. That didn't work, Morrison observed. What else can you try? Marcus looked around the station more carefully. There were multiple ropes, some thinner and some thicker. There was also a thick wooden beam positioned horizontally about 8 feet off the ground. He studied the setup, trying to think creatively. An idea began to form. Instead of trying to climb the rope with pure upper body strength, what if he could use the horizontal beam as an anchor point? He grabbed a thinner rope and climbed onto a nearby piece of equipment that brought him level with the beam. From there, he was able to loop the rope around the beam and create a pulley system that allowed him to use his leg strength more effectively. The improvised pulley wasn't perfect, but it worked. Marcus was able to reach the top of the rope using a combination of the mechanical advantage he had created and his available strength. When he lowered himself back down, Morrison was smiling. Interesting solution. You used available resources to compensate for a strength limitation. That's exactly the kind of thinking Special Operations requires. They moved to the next station, which featured a series of balance beams at different heights and angles. But instead of simply crossing the beams, Morrison had placed various objects on them that had to be moved from one end to the other without falling. Balance under normal conditions is one skill, Morrison explained. Balance while multitasking under pressure is a completely different challenge. Marcus stepped onto the first beam, which was about 3 feet off the ground and 6 inches wide. In his hands, he carried a bucket filled with water that he needed to transport to the other end without spilling. The task seemed straightforward at first, but as he moved along the beam, the water's motion created additional challenges for maintaining balance. Halfway across, Marcus began to wobble. He had been focusing so intently on not spilling the water that he had neglected his foot placement. As he felt himself losing balance, his instinct was to drop the bucket and catch himself. Instead, he forced himself to think through the problem quickly. He crouched down on the beam, lowering his center of gravity and creating a more stable platform. From this position, he was able to slide the bucket along the beam ahead of him while maintaining better balance. It wasn't elegant, but it was effective. Good adaptation under pressure, Morrison noted as Marcus completed the crossing. You recognized when your initial approach wasn't working and found an alternative quickly. The third station involved puzzle boxes that had to be opened using various tools and techniques. Some required coordination between multiple people, but since Marcus was working alone, he had to find ways to accomplish multi-person tasks by himself. Problem solving under constraints, Morrison explained. In real operations, you rarely have ideal conditions or perfect resources. Success depends on making the best use of what's available. Marcus worked through several puzzle boxes, each presenting different challenges. Some required patience and careful observation, others demanded quick thinking and creative tool use. He failed to solve several of them within the time limits Morrison set, but he approached each challenge methodically and didn't become frustrated when solutions weren't immediately apparent. Your problem-solving approach is systematic, Morrison observed. That's valuable. Many people get flustered when they can't solve something quickly and they start making random attempts instead of thinking strategically. The fourth station was perhaps the most unusual. Morrison had set up a scenario involving multiple information sources that had to be analyzed and synthesized quickly. There were maps, written reports, photographs, and audio recordings, all containing pieces of information that related to a hypothetical mission scenario. Information processing under time pressure, Morrison explained. Special operations often involves making decisions with incomplete information while under extreme time constraints. You have to be able to identify what's important, what's reliable, and what's missing. Marcus spread the materials out and began working through them systematically. The scenario involved a hostage situation in a foreign country, and each information source provided different pieces of the puzzle. Some information was contradictory, some was clearly outdated, and some seemed designed to be misleading. As he worked, Marcus began to see patterns in the information. He started arranging the materials in different ways, looking for connections and inconsistencies. He found himself becoming absorbed in the challenge, forgetting about his nervousness, and focusing entirely on the problem at hand.
Time, Morrison called after 20 minutes. Marcus looked up, surprised by how quickly the time had passed.
He had been completely engrossed in the analysis, and he realized that this was the first time since arriving at boot camp that he had felt truly confident in his abilities. "Tell me what you found," Morrison said. Marcus walked through his analysis, explaining how he had identified reliable information sources, resolved contradictions, and developed a picture of the situation. He pointed out gaps in the intelligence and areas where additional information would be valuable. Morrison listened carefully, occasionally asking questions that pushed Marcus to explain his reasoning more thoroughly. When Marcus finished his presentation, Morrison was quiet for a long moment. "That was impressive work," Morrison finally said. "Your analysis was thorough, logical, and you correctly identified the most critical information. You also recognized what you didn't know, which is just as important as understanding what you do know." They moved to the final station, which was unlike anything Marcus had encountered before. Morrison had created an obstacle that required multiple attempts to complete, with each attempt revealing new information about how to succeed. "Learning from failure," Morrison explained. "This obstacle is designed to be impossible to complete on the first try. Success depends on paying attention to what doesn't work and using that information to improve your approach." The obstacle consisted of a series of platforms, ropes, and barriers that had to be navigated in a specific sequence. But the sequence wasn't obvious, and several elements of the course were deliberately misleading. Marcus's first attempt ended quickly when a platform he stepped on gave way, dropping him safely to a mat below. His second attempt got further but ended when a rope he was using to swing between platforms wasn't anchored properly. Each failure taught him something new about the course's design. By his fifth attempt, Marcus had figured out that the obvious path through the obstacle was intentionally misleading, and the actual solution required using elements in unexpected ways. He completed the course on his sixth try, exhausted but exhilarated. "How do you feel about failing multiple times before succeeding?" Morrison asked. "It was frustrating at first," Marcus admitted, "but once I realized that failure was part of the learning process, it became more like solving a puzzle. Each failure gave me information I needed for the next attempt." That's exactly the right attitude. In special operations, initial failure is often inevitable. The key is learning from it quickly and adapting your approach. As they wrapped up the evening's activities, Morrison led Marcus to a quiet corner of the gymnasium. "How do you think you performed tonight?" Morrison asked. Marcus considered the question carefully. "I think I did better with the problem-solving and analytical tasks than with the physical challenges. My rope climbing solution worked, but it wasn't very efficient. The balance beam tasks were challenging, but I was able to adapt when my first approach didn't work." "What about your overall comfort level with unfamiliar challenges?" "At first, I was nervous because I didn't know what to expect. But once I started working on the tasks, I became more focused on solving the problems than worrying about my performance." Morrison nodded. "That's a significant observation. Many people never get past the anxiety about unfamiliar situations. They spend so much energy worrying about failure that they can't focus on finding solutions." They sat in silence for a moment, and Marcus sensed that Morrison was evaluating everything he had observed during the evening. "Chen, I want you to understand something important," Morrison finally said. "Physical fitness can be improved with training. Technical skills can be taught.
but certain mental attributes are much more difficult to develop. Tonight, you demonstrated several characteristics that can't easily be trained. Marcus waited, unsure how to respond. You approached unfamiliar problems systematically rather than randomly. You adapted your methods when initial approaches didn't work. You maintained focus under pressure instead of becoming flustered. And perhaps most importantly, you learned from failure instead of being discouraged by it. Morrison paused, looking directly at Marcus. Your current physical fitness scores suggest you're not ready for advanced training, but your mental approach suggests you have potential that hasn't been properly developed yet. The question is whether you're willing to put in the work necessary to bridge that gap. Marcus felt a surge of hope mixed with determination. For the first time since arriving at boot camp, someone was talking about his potential rather than his limitations. Yes, sir. I'm absolutely willing to do whatever work is necessary. Good. Because if you're serious about special operations, the work starts now, not after you finish basic training. I'm going to recommend you for an accelerated fitness program that will run parallel to your regular boot camp training. It will be demanding, and there's no guarantee of success. Marcus felt his heart racing. This was the opportunity he had dreamed about, but never expected to receive. Sir, I won't let you down. Morrison smiled. I'm not worried about you letting me down, Chen. I'm more concerned about you believing in yourself enough to push through when the training gets difficult. You have capabilities you haven't discovered yet, but discovering them is going to require you to go beyond what you think you can handle. As they prepared to leave the gymnasium, Morrison gave Marcus one final piece of advice. Tomorrow, you'll go back to regular boot camp training with your company. Don't tell the other recruits about this program yet. Focus on applying what you learned tonight to your regular training activities. Look for opportunities to use creative problem-solving instead of just trying to muscle through challenges. Marcus nodded, understanding the wisdom in keeping this development private for now. The Accelerated Fitness Program starts Monday evening. Report to the base pool at 1900 hours. Bring multiple sets of PT gear because you're going to need them. As Marcus walked back to his barracks, his mind was spinning with excitement and anticipation. The coffee spill that had seemed like such a disaster yesterday had opened a door he never could have imagined. But more than that, the evening with Morrison had shown him something about himself that he hadn't recognized before. He wasn't just the clumsy recruit who couldn't keep up with physical training. He was someone who could think clearly under pressure, solve complex problems, and learn from failure. These were skills he had always possessed, but boot camp's focus on physical performance had overshadowed them. For the first time since joining the Navy, Marcus felt like he was on the right path. The work ahead would be challenging, but he was no longer facing it with the same sense of inadequacy that had plagued him for weeks. Morrison had helped him see that success in special operations wasn't just about being the strongest or fastest person in the room. It was about being the person who could find solutions when others saw only problems. As he settled into his bunk that night, Marcus made a promise to himself. Whatever challenges the accelerated training program brought, he would meet them with the same systematic thinking and adaptability he had demonstrated that evening. His journey toward special operations was just beginning. But for the first time, he truly believed it was possible. Monday evening arrived with an autumn chill that cut through the humid air around the base pool facility. Marcus stood at the entrance, his gear bag slung over his shoulder, watching other personnel finishing their regular swimming workouts. The pool area was larger than he had expected, with both a standard lap pool and what appeared to be a specialized training tank, with various obstacles and equipment. Lieutenant Commander Morrison emerged from a side office, carrying a clipboard and wearing the same practical PT gear Marcus had seen him in previously. With him was another man Marcus didn't recognize, a compact individual with the kind of weathered appearance that suggested extensive outdoor experience. "Chen, good to see you again," Morrison said. "This is Senior Chief Ramirez, who'll be working with us on the physical conditioning component of your training." Ramirez stepped forward and shook Marcus's hand. His grip was firm but not unnecessarily aggressive, and his eyes held the same evaluative quality Marcus had noticed in Morrison. "Heard you had an interesting performance in the gym last week," Ramirez said. "Tonight, we're going to see how you handle challenges in a different environment." Morrison gestured toward the pool area. "Aquatic training is fundamental to special operations, But we're not just going to teach you to swim faster or hold your breath longer. We're going to teach you to think clearly when your body is under stress and your brain is screaming for oxygen. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. He was a competent swimmer, having learned as a child, but he had no experience with the kind of advanced water training he imagined special operations required. Before we begin, Ramirez said, we need to establish your baseline capabilities and understand any limitations you might have. They started with basic swimming assessments. Marcus completed several laps of different strokes while Morrison timed his performance and Ramirez observed his technique. His times were average, neither impressive nor concerning, but both instructors seemed more interested in his form and efficiency than his speed. Your stroke mechanics are decent, Ramirez noted. You're not fighting the water, which is good. Many people exhaust themselves by trying to overpower their environment instead of working with it. Next came treading water, an exercise that quickly revealed Marcus's limitations. He managed to stay afloat for several minutes using standard techniques, but as fatigue set in, his movements became increasingly desperate and inefficient. "Stop!" Morrison called after about 8 minutes. "Come to the side." Marcus swam to the pool edge, breathing heavily and feeling frustrated by his performance. "How do you feel?" Morrison asked. "Tired," Marcus admitted. "And frustrated. I know I should be able to do better than that. Why do you think you struggled?" Marcus considered the question while catching his breath. "I think I was fighting against the water instead of using it efficiently, and I was probably tensing up muscles that didn't need to be working." Ramirez nodded approvingly. "Good self-assessment. Most people just say they need to get stronger. You identified the real problems with your technique." They spent the next hour working on water efficiency techniques. Ramirez demonstrated methods for conserving energy while treading water, using subtle movements and body positioning to maintain buoyancy with minimal effort. Marcus practiced these techniques repeatedly, with both instructors providing detailed feedback. "The key is understanding that water will support you if you let it," Ramirez explained. "Your job is to make small adjustments to maintain position, not to fight against gravity." As Marcus became more comfortable with the efficiency techniques, his performance improved dramatically. He was able to tread water for nearly 20 minutes using the new methods, a significant improvement from his initial attempt. "Much better," Morrison observed. "Now let's add some complexity." The next exercise involved treading water while performing various tasks with his hands. Marcus had to catch and throw a ball, sort colored objects into containers, and even write answers to math problems on a waterproof board, all while maintaining his position in the water. Initially, the multitasking caused his water efficiency to deteriorate as he focused on the hand tasks, but gradually, he learned to maintain the new treading techniques while dedicating mental attention to other activities. Cognitive function under physical stress, Morrison explained between exercises. In real operations, you might need to perform complex tasks while your body is under significant strain. This training helps develop that capability. After the pool work, they moved to a different area, where Ramirez had set up what he called stress position training. This involved holding physically uncomfortable positions while performing mental tasks. "Physical discomfort is a fact of life in special operations," Ramirez explained. "You might need to remain motionless in an awkward position for hours while maintaining alertness and making critical observations." Marcus found himself holding a low squat position while memorizing sequences of numbers and letters that Morrison called out. The position was uncomfortable after just a few minutes, and maintaining concentration on the memory tasks became increasingly difficult as his leg muscles burned. "Your brain wants to focus on the discomfort," Morrison noted as Marcus struggled to repeat a number sequence correctly. "You have to train it to prioritize the mission-critical information instead." They practiced various combinations of physical stress positions and mental tasks. Marcus held wall sits while solving mathematical problems, maintained push-up positions while answering geography questions, and performed isometric holds while listening to audio recordings and identifying specific information. Each exercise was challenging, but Marcus began to notice patterns in how his mind responded to the dual stressors. Initially, physical discomfort dominated his attention, making mental tasks nearly impossible,
But as the training progressed, he developed techniques for compartmentalizing the discomfort and maintaining cognitive focus. "You're learning to manage your attention," Ramirez observed. "That's a skill most people never develop, even with years of training." The evening's final exercise was perhaps the most challenging yet. Morrison had prepared a scenario that combined multiple elements from their previous training sessions. Marcus had to solve a complex logic puzzle while treading water in the training tank, then swim to retrieve puzzle pieces that were scattered around the pool area. This simulates the kind of multifaceted challenges you might face in real operations, Morrison explained. You need to maintain multiple priorities simultaneously while dealing with physical stress and time pressure. Marcus approached the challenge systematically, just as he had learned during their first training session. He studied the logic puzzle first, identifying the key relationships and constraints before entering the water. Once in the pool, he worked on maintaining efficient treading techniques while keeping part of his mind focused on the puzzle solution. When he began swimming to collect puzzle pieces, Marcus discovered that the physical locations of the pieces were actually clues to the puzzle itself. The exercise required him to recognize patterns not just in the logical relationships, but also in the spatial arrangement of elements around the pool area. It took him nearly 40 minutes to complete the challenge, but his solution was correct, and both instructors seemed pleased with his approach. "You maintained systematic thinking even under multiple stressors," Morrison noted. "That's exactly what we're looking for." As they finished cleaning up the training equipment, Ramirez pulled Marcus aside for a private conversation. "How did tonight compare to what you expected?" Ramirez asked. "It was different from what I imagined," Marcus admitted. "I thought it would be more about physical endurance and less about mental training. What did you learn about yourself?" Marcus considered the question carefully. "I learned that I can maintain focus under physical stress better than I thought, and I learned that efficiency is more important than strength in many situations." "Those are important lessons. But what did you learn about your limitations?" "I learned that my current fitness level limits how long I can maintain peak performance. And I learned that I need to develop better automatic responses to stress so I can dedicate more mental resources to problem solving." Ramirez nodded approvingly. "Good awareness. Many people in your position would focus on what they did well and ignore areas that need improvement." Morrison rejoined them as they prepared to leave the pool facility. "Chen, your performance tonight reinforced what I observed during our first training session. You have the mental attributes necessary for advanced training, but your physical conditioning needs significant improvement." Marcus nodded, expecting this feedback. "Starting Wednesday, you'll join a specialized fitness program that runs in addition to your regular boot camp training. It will be intensive, and it will push you beyond what you think you're capable of handling." Morrison handed Marcus a training schedule that detailed workouts 6 days per week, with rest only on Sundays. This program is designed specifically for candidates who have the mental aptitude for special operations but need accelerated physical development. It's not easy, and not everyone who starts it successfully completes it. Marcus reviewed the schedule, noting that the training would add approximately 15 hours per week to his existing boot camp requirements. "Sir, I understand this will be demanding. I'm committed to completing the program successfully." "I believe you are," Morrison replied. "But commitment alone isn't sufficient. You'll need to develop new approaches to physical training just like you learned new approaches to water survival tonight." Ramirez offered additional guidance as they walked toward the exit. "The key to success in this program is understanding that physical training is as much about mental conditioning as it is about building strength and endurance. Every workout is an opportunity to practice maintaining focus under stress." As they reached the parking area, Morrison provided final instructions for the week ahead. "Continue with your regular boot camp training, but start applying some of the mental techniques we've worked on. Look for opportunities to practice maintaining cognitive focus when you're physically stressed or uncomfortable." Marcus felt a surge of determination as he walked back to his barracks. The training had been challenging, but it had also been exactly the kind of challenge he felt prepared to handle. Unlike the purely physical demands of boot camp, this program played to his strengths while systematically addressing his weaknesses. The next morning, Marcus returned to regular boot camp training with a different perspective. During physical fitness assessments, he applied the efficiency techniques he had learned at the pool. Instead of trying to muscle through exercises with brute force, He focused on maintaining proper form and conserving energy for sustained performance. The results were immediately noticeable. His push-up count improved by 12 repetitions, not because he had gotten stronger overnight, but because he was using his existing strength more effectively. His running time improved by nearly 30 seconds as he applied lessons about working with his environment rather than fighting against it. Chief Williams noticed the improvement during afternoon training. "Chen, whatever you did differently today, keep doing it. That's the kind of performance I expect to see consistently." During lunch, Rodriguez commented on Marcus's improved mood and energy level. "You seem different lately, man. More confident or something?" Marcus smiled but didn't elaborate. He was different, but not in ways he could easily explain to his fellow recruits. The specialized training had given him insights into his own capabilities that changed how he approached every challenge. Wednesday evening arrived quickly, and Marcus reported to the fitness center for his first specialized workout session. He found Morrison waiting with two other instructors he hadn't met before, both of whom had the same practical, experienced appearance that seemed common among Special Operations personnel. "Chen, meet Petty Officer First Class Thompson and Chief Petty Officer Martinez," Morrison said. "They'll be managing your physical conditioning program." Thompson stepped forward, a tall woman with the lean build of a distance runner. "We understand you've been working with Lieutenant Commander Morrison on cognitive training," Thompson said. "Our job is to bring your physical capabilities up to match your mental potential." Martinez, a stocky man with heavily muscled forearms, gestured toward the fitness equipment. "This program is built around functional fitness rather than traditional strength training. Every exercise has a purpose related to real operational requirements." They began with a comprehensive fitness assessment that was far more detailed than anything Marcus had experienced in boot camp. The instructors measured not just his strength and endurance, but also his flexibility, balance, coordination, and recovery time between exercises. "We need to understand your complete physical profile," Thompson explained as she recorded his performance on various balance challenges. "Effective training requires targeting specific weaknesses while maintaining existing strengths." The assessment revealed exactly what Marcus had expected. His cardiovascular endurance was below average. His upper body strength was adequate but not exceptional, and his overall power output was limited. However, his coordination and balance were better than average, and his ability to learn new movement patterns was quite good. "Interesting profile," Martinez noted as he reviewed the assessment results. "Your neuromuscular coordination is actually quite advanced. You learn new movements quickly and maintain good form even under fatigue," Thompson agreed. "Your limitations are primarily in the energy systems, not in movement quality. That's actually good news because energy systems respond quickly to appropriate training." They designed a program specifically tailored to Marcus's profile. Instead of traditional weightlifting routines, the program emphasized compound movements that developed functional strength while improving cardiovascular capacity. Instead of long, steady-state cardio sessions, they prescribed interval training that built both power and endurance. "Every workout will include cognitive elements," Martinez explained. "You'll be solving problems, making decisions, or processing information while performing physical exercises. This develops your ability to think clearly under physical stress." The first workout was brutal but manageable. Marcus performed circuits that combined strength exercises with cognitive challenges, just as he had practiced during his aquatic training. He did burpees while reciting memorized sequences, completed obstacle courses while solving math problems, and performed isometric holds while identifying objects in rapidly flashed photographs. "How do you feel?" Thompson asked as Marcus finished the session. "Challenged but not overwhelmed," Marcus replied honestly. "The physical work was hard, but the mental components actually helped me maintain focus." "That's exactly the right response," Martinez noted. "Many people find that cognitive engagement actually improves their physical performance by preventing them from focusing too much on discomfort." Over the following days, Marcus threw himself into the specialized training program with complete dedication. He attended regular boot camp training during the day, then participated in the advanced program during evenings and early mornings. The schedule was demanding, but he found that the variety and challenge kept him motivated. More importantly, his performance in regular boot camp continued to improve dramatically. His running times dropped consistently, his strength scores increased, and his overall confidence grew. Other recruits began to notice the changes, and even the drill instructors commented on his transformation. "Chen, you've made remarkable progress over the past 2 weeks," Chief Williams observed during a particularly challenging obstacle course session. "What changed?" "I learned that efficiency matters more than strength, Chief. I'm working smarter, not just harder." Williams nodded approvingly. "Good lesson. Remember that as you advance in your career." By the end of his 4th week in the specialized program, Marcus had achieved something he hadn't thought possible when he first arrived at boot camp. His fitness scores were not only meeting military standards but exceeding them. More importantly, he had developed confidence in his ability to handle complex challenges under pressure. During a program review session, Morrison, Ramirez, Thompson, and Martinez discussed his progress. "His improvement has been exceptional," Thompson reported. "His cardiovascular capacity has increased by over 30%, and his strength scores have improved across the board." More significantly, Ramirez added, "His ability to maintain cognitive function under physical stress has improved dramatically. He can now perform complex mental tasks even during high-intensity exercise." Morrison looked pleased but not surprised. "His mental attributes were always strong. We just needed to develop the physical foundation to support them." As they concluded the session, Morrison addressed Marcus directly. "Chen, your progress over the past month has been remarkable. You've demonstrated that, with proper training and dedication, initial limitations can be overcome." Marcus felt a sense of pride but also humility. The improvements were significant, but he understood they were just the beginning of a much longer journey. "Sir, I appreciate the opportunity to be part of this program. I've learned more about my capabilities in the past month than in the previous year." "That learning is going to accelerate," Morrison replied, "because next week we're going to introduce you to some of the other candidates who've been selected for advanced training. It's time to see how your individual development translates to team performance." As Marcus walked back to his barracks that evening, he reflected on how dramatically his situation had changed since the coffee spill incident. A single moment of clumsiness had opened doors to training opportunities he never could have imagined. But more than that, the training had revealed capabilities within himself that he hadn't known existed. The journey ahead would continue to be challenging, but Marcus now approached challenges with a completely different mindset. He had learned that limitations were often temporary conditions that could be overcome with proper training and determination. More importantly, he had learned that his greatest strength was his ability to think clearly and adapt quickly when faced with unfamiliar situations. As he settled into his bunk, Marcus felt genuinely excited about the next phase of his training. Working with other advanced candidates would present new challenges, but he was confident in his ability to handle whatever came next. The transformation from struggling recruit to special operations candidate was nearly complete, and Marcus was ready to take the next step in his remarkable journey. The specialized training facility was located in a section of the base Marcus had never seen before. As he followed Morrison's directions through a maze of administrative buildings and equipment warehouses, he began to understand that his training was moving beyond the standard boot camp environment into something far more sophisticated. The building itself was unremarkable from the outside, but once Morrison led him through the security checkpoint, Marcus found himself in a facility that looked more like a high-tech laboratory than a military training center. The main floor contained advanced fitness equipment, tactical simulation systems, and what appeared to be multiple virtual reality setups. "Welcome to the Advanced Candidate Assessment Center," Morrison said as they walked through the main corridor. "This is where we evaluate potential special operations personnel using realistic scenario-based training." In a large briefing room, Marcus met the other candidates who had been selected for this phase of training. There were 8 of them total, representing different military branches and specialties. What struck Marcus immediately was how different they appeared from each other. Sarah Mitchell was a Marine Corps Lance Corporal from California, compact and obviously athletic, with the kind of focused intensity Marcus associated with elite athletes. David Park was an Army specialist from Texas, tall and lanky, with the calm demeanor of someone who had already seen combat deployment. Jennifer Torres was a Navy petty officer from Florida, carrying herself with the confident bearing of an experienced sailor. The group also included Marcus himself, plus 4 others who introduced themselves as they gathered around a conference table. Each had been selected through different pathways, but Morrison explained that they all shared certain cognitive characteristics that made them potential special operations candidates. You're here because you've demonstrated exceptional problem-solving abilities, adaptability under stress, and the capacity to learn complex skills quickly. Morrison addressed the group. Over the next 2 weeks, you'll be working together on increasingly challenging scenarios designed to evaluate your potential for advanced training. Senior Chief Ramirez joined the briefing, along with several other instructors Marcus hadn't met before. The team included specialists in different aspects of special operations training, from combat medicine to communication systems to explosive ordnance disposal. Individual skills are important, Ramirez explained, but special operations is fundamentally about team performance. The most physically capable person in the world is useless if they can't work effectively with others under extreme stress. Lieutenant Commander Morrison activated a large display screen that showed a detailed map of what appeared to be a small coastal town. Your first scenario begins tomorrow morning. You'll be presented with a complex situation that requires coordination between multiple team members, each bringing different skills and perspectives to solve the problem. Marcus studied the map, noting the various geographical features, building layouts, and infrastructure elements. Even without knowing the specific mission requirements, he could see that success would require careful planning and flawless execution. Tonight, you'll have the opportunity to get acquainted with each other and begin forming working relationships, Morrison continued. Tomorrow morning, you'll be thrown into a situation where those relationships will be tested immediately. As the formal briefing concluded, the candidates gathered in a smaller room designed for informal interaction. Marcus found himself naturally gravitating toward conversations about problem-solving approaches and learning strategies, topics that had become central to his thinking over the past month. Sarah Mitchell was discussing her background in competitive martial arts and how that experience had taught her to adapt quickly to opponents with different styles and strategies. David Park talked about his deployment experiences and the importance of remaining calm when plans fell apart. Jennifer Torres described her work in naval communications and the critical nature of clear, accurate information sharing under pressure. "What's your background, Marcus?" asked Jennifer. "You're the only one who came through the boot camp pathway." Marcus hesitated, still somewhat uncomfortable discussing his unconventional journey to this program. "I actually started as a pretty marginal recruit," he admitted. "I was struggling with physical fitness standards and generally not meeting expectations, but I had an accidental encounter with Lieutenant Commander Morrison that led to some specialized training opportunities." He explained the coffee spill incident and his subsequent training, focusing on the lessons he had learned about systematic thinking and adaptability. The other candidates listened with interest, and Marcus was surprised to find that his story resonated with several of them. "I had a similar experience," David said. "I was a mediocre soldier until I got thrown into a situation that required me to think creatively rather than just follow standard procedures. That's when I realized I had capabilities I didn't know about." Sarah nodded in agreement. "Combat sports taught me that your biggest limitations are often mental. Physical capabilities can be developed, but learning to think clearly under pressure is much more difficult." As the evening progressed, Marcus began to understand that despite their different backgrounds, all of the candidates had experienced some form of breakthrough moment where they discovered hidden capabilities. This shared experience created an immediate bond between them. The next morning began with a comprehensive briefing on their first scenario. They were presented with a simulated hostage situation in the coastal town they had seen on the map the previous day. The scenario involved multiple buildings, numerous civilians, an unknown number of hostile actors, and time-sensitive intelligence that required immediate action. Your mission is to gather intelligence, develop a plan, and execute a coordinated response that neutralizes the threat while minimizing civilian casualties. Morrison explained, "You have access to various resources, but no predetermined leadership structure. You need to organize yourselves and assign roles based on your individual capabilities." The candidates were transported to a realistic training environment that perfectly replicated the coastal town from the map. The attention to detail was extraordinary, from the weather-worn buildings to the scattered personal belongings that suggested recent civilian evacuation. Marcus found himself automatically assessing the situation using the systematic approach he had developed during his specialized training. He studied the building layouts, identified potential observation points, and analyzed the terrain for tactical advantages and disadvantages. We need to gather information before we make any plans, he suggested to the group. Let's establish what we know, what we don't know, and what we need to find out. Jennifer Torres took the lead on communications, establishing secure channels between team members and maintaining contact with the operations center. David Park used his combat experience to assess the tactical situation and identify potential threats. Sarah Mitchell's martial arts background proved valuable for planning close-quarters operations. As they worked together, Marcus realized that his role was emerging as a strategic coordinator. His systematic thinking and ability to process complex information quickly made him effective at synthesizing inputs from other team members and developing comprehensive plans. Marcus has a talent for seeing the big picture, Jennifer observed during a quick planning session. He's able to keep track of multiple variables while the rest of us focus on our specialties. The scenario unfolded over several hours with new information and complications introduced regularly. The team had to adapt their plans multiple times as situations changed, and Marcus found himself serving as a central coordination point for these adaptations. When they successfully completed the mission, the team gathered for a detailed debrief with the instructors. Morrison and his colleagues had monitored every aspect of their performance, from individual decision-making to team communication patterns. Your performance was impressive, Morrison told the group. You organized effectively under pressure, adapted to changing conditions, and maintained focus on mission objectives despite multiple complications. Ramirez focused on Marcus specifically. Your role as strategic coordinator emerged naturally, and you performed it effectively. You maintained awareness of all team activities while making decisions that supported overall mission success. The feedback was positive, but Marcus understood that this was only the first of many increasingly challenging scenarios. Over the following days, the team faced situations involving combat medicine, explosive ordnance disposal, underwater operations, and high-altitude insertions. Each scenario revealed different aspects of individual and team capabilities. Marcus consistently found himself in coordination roles, but he also discovered that his adaptability allowed him to support team members in various specialties when needed. During an underwater demolition exercise, Marcus's recent aquatic training proved invaluable. He was able to maintain cognitive function during extended underwater operations, helping the team complete complex tasks while managing limited air supplies and challenging environmental conditions. You've really come a long way from that recruit who couldn't complete basic PT standards, Sarah observed after the underwater exercise. Your swimming and diving capabilities are actually quite advanced now. Marcus felt pride in the recognition, but he also understood that his progress was the result of systematic training rather than natural ability. This understanding gave him confidence that he could continue to develop new capabilities as needed. The most challenging scenario occurred during the second week, when the team was presented with a multi-phase operation that required coordination between air, land, and sea elements. The mission involved intelligence gathering, personnel recovery, and tactical strikes, all within compressed time frames and with limited resources. Marcus found himself serving as the primary mission planner, responsible for coordinating inputs from all team members and developing integrated operational approaches. The responsibility was intense, but his systematic thinking training had prepared him for exactly this kind of complex analysis. We need to sequence our actions carefully, Marcus explained during the planning phase. Each element of the mission affects the others, so timing and coordination are critical. He developed a detailed timeline that accounted for movement speeds, equipment requirements, communication delays, and contingency planning. The other team members contributed their specialized knowledge, but they looked to Marcus for overall mission architecture. When they executed the plan, everything went smoothly until an unexpected complication emerged during the personnel recovery phase. The team had to adapt quickly, and Marcus found himself making real-time decisions that affected multiple operational elements simultaneously. Change of plans, he announced over the communication system. David, redirect to the alternate extraction point. Jennifer, adjust communication protocols to account for the new timeline. Sarah, modify your approach route to provide overwatch for the new extraction. The team adapted flawlessly to his directions, and they successfully completed the mission despite the complications. During the debrief, the instructors seemed particularly impressed with the team's ability to maintain coordination while adapting to unexpected changes. That kind of real-time coordination is extremely difficult to achieve, Morrison noted. It requires complete trust between team members and exceptional situational awareness from the coordinator. As the 2-week assessment period concluded, Marcus reflected on how much his understanding of his own capabilities had evolved. When he started boot camp, he had thought success was primarily about individual physical performance. The specialized training had taught him about the importance of mental resilience and systematic thinking. But this team-based training had revealed another dimension entirely. His greatest strength wasn't just problem-solving or adaptability, but his ability to help other people work together effectively under pressure. He had discovered that he was naturally suited for leadership roles that emphasized coordination and strategic thinking rather than traditional command authority. During the final evaluation session, Morrison addressed each candidate individually, providing detailed feedback on their performance and recommendations for future training pathways. "Chen, your development over the past 2 months has been remarkable," Morrison began. "You've progressed from a struggling basic training recruit to someone ready for advanced special operations training." Marcus listened carefully as Morrison outlined his strengths and areas for continued development. "Your systematic thinking capabilities are exceptional, and your ability to maintain cognitive function under stress is well above average. More importantly, you've demonstrated natural leadership abilities that emphasize coordination and strategic planning rather than dominance or control." Morrison paused, looking directly at Marcus. "Based on your performance during this assessment period, I'm recommending you for immediate transfer to the Naval Special Warfare Preparatory School. This will put you on a direct pathway to SEAL training, assuming you continue to meet performance standards." Marcus felt a surge of excitement mixed with humility. The recommendation was beyond what he had dared to hope for when he first spilled coffee on Morrison's uniform. "Sir, I'm honored by the recommendation. I understand that preparatory school and SEAL training will be extremely challenging." "They will be," Morrison agreed. "But you've demonstrated the mental attributes necessary for success. Your physical capabilities have improved dramatically, and they'll continue to improve with proper training." Morrison handed Marcus a folder containing his transfer orders and information about the preparatory school program. "The preparatory school begins in 3 weeks. Use that time to maintain your current fitness level and mentally prepare for the next phase of training. The challenges will be significantly more intense than what you've experienced here." As the meeting concluded, Marcus gathered with the other candidates to exchange contact information and share thoughts about their experiences. Several of them would be continuing on to advanced training programs in their respective branches, and there was a sense of shared accomplishment among the group. "You know, when I first met you, I wondered how someone from basic training had made it into this program," Sarah told Marcus. "But watching you coordinate these missions, I can see why Morrison selected you. You have a rare ability to see how all the pieces fit together." David agreed. "Your systematic approach to problem-solving kept us organized even when everything was falling apart. That's exactly the kind of thinking special operations requires." As Marcus walked back to his temporary quarters to begin packing for the transfer, he thought about the incredible journey that had brought him to this point. A single clumsy moment in a mess hall had revealed capabilities he never knew he possessed and opened doors to opportunities he had never imagined possible. But more than that, the experience had taught him something fundamental about human potential. Everyone possessed hidden capabilities that could be developed with proper training and opportunity. The key was finding training that matched individual strengths while systematically addressing weaknesses. Marcus understood that his journey was far from over. SEAL training would present challenges that would test every capability he had developed over the past 2 months. But he also understood that he was better prepared for those challenges than he could have imagined when he first arrived at boot camp. The systematic thinking skills, adaptability under pressure, and leadership capabilities he had discovered would serve him well in whatever came next. More importantly, he had learned to approach challenges with confidence rather than fear, knowing that even apparent limitations could be overcome with dedication and proper training. As he began preparing for the next phase of his military career, Marcus felt genuinely excited about the unknown challenges ahead. The coffee spill that had seemed like such a disaster had actually been the beginning of the most remarkable period of growth and development in his life. Whatever came next, he was ready to meet it with the same systematic approach and adaptability that had brought him this far. The Naval Special Warfare Preparatory School occupied a sprawling complex on the California coast, where the constant sound of ocean waves provided a backdrop to some of the most intensive military training in the world. As Marcus stepped off the transport vehicle with his gear bag, he felt a mixture of excitement and nervous anticipation that had become familiar over the past few months. The 3 weeks between his assessment program and arriving at preparatory school had passed quickly. Marcus had used the time to maintain his fitness level while mentally preparing for what he knew would be the most challenging phase of his military training yet. He had read extensively about SEAL training, spoken with former special operations personnel, and continued practicing the systematic thinking techniques that had become central to his approach to problem-solving. Standing in formation with 49 other candidates, Marcus realized that his journey from struggling recruit to preparatory school candidate was remarkable, but it was also just the beginning. Every person in this formation had demonstrated exceptional capabilities to earn their place here, and the coming months would test those capabilities in ways none of them had experienced before. Master Chief Petty Officer James Sullivan stepped in front of the formation, his presence commanding immediate attention from every candidate. Sullivan had over 20 years of special operations experience, and his weathered appearance suggested he had seen action in multiple theaters of operation. "Gentlemen, welcome to the most challenging training program in the United States military," Sullivan announced, his voice carrying clearly across the formation without amplification. "Over the next 6 months, you will be tested physically, mentally, and emotionally in ways designed to identify those who have what it takes to serve in naval special warfare." Marcus listened intently as Sullivan outlined the structure of the preparatory program. The training would progress through several phases, each building on the previous phase while introducing new levels of complexity and stress. Physical conditioning would continue to be important, but the emphasis would increasingly shift toward problem-solving, leadership, and performance under extreme pressure. "Many of you have succeeded in everything you've attempted in your military careers so far," Sullivan continued. "This program is specifically designed to push you beyond your current capabilities. Some of you will discover strengths you didn't know you possessed. Others will encounter limitations they've never faced before." The first few weeks of preparatory school confirmed Marcus's expectations about the intensity level. Physical training sessions were brutal, combining cardiovascular conditioning, strength development, and skills training into integrated challenges that left candidates exhausted but exhilarated. Marcus found that his previous specialized training had prepared him well for these challenges. His systematic approach to problem-solving proved valuable during complex obstacle courses and tactical scenarios. His ability to maintain cognitive function under physical stress helped him excel during exercises that combined physical exertion with mental tasks. More importantly, his experience with team coordination continued to serve him well as the candidates were formed into working groups for various training exercises. Marcus consistently found himself in informal leadership roles, helping to organize group efforts and coordinate between team members with different specialties. During a particularly challenging week-long field exercise, Marcus's coordination abilities were tested in realistic combat scenarios. His team was assigned a complex mission involving multiple objectives, limited resources, and constantly changing tactical situations. "We need to prioritize our objectives based on mission impact and resource requirements," Marcus explained to his team during the initial planning session. "Let's identify which objectives support others and sequence our actions to maximize effectiveness." His systematic approach helped the team develop a comprehensive plan that accounted for contingencies and alternative approaches. When they executed the mission, they encountered numerous complications that required real-time adaptations, but Marcus's coordination kept the team focused and effective throughout the exercise. "Outstanding performance," commented Lieutenant Commander Hayes, one of the preparatory school instructors, during the mission debrief. "Your team maintained coordination and mission focus despite multiple tactical complications. That kind of performance under pressure is exactly what we're looking for." As the preparatory school program progressed, Marcus began to understand that his selection for SEAL training was becoming increasingly likely. His performance consistently ranked in the top tier of candidates, and the instructors frequently used his approach to training as examples for other candidates. But more importantly, Marcus was discovering aspects of leadership and teamwork that went beyond his previous experience. Working with other highly capable candidates in extreme situations was teaching him about the subtle dynamics that made teams effective under pressure.
You have a talent for bringing out the best in other people, observed Chief Petty Officer Anderson during a leadership evaluation session. You don't try to control or dominate team members.
Instead, you help them understand how their individual strengths contribute to team success. This feedback resonated with Marcus because it reflected his growing understanding of his own capabilities. He was most effective when he could help other people work together toward common objectives, using his systematic thinking to organize complex efforts and his adaptability to manage changing conditions. During the 4th month of preparatory school, the candidates participated in a major exercise that simulated extended special operations deployment. The exercise lasted 3 weeks and included elements of reconnaissance, direct action, and personnel recovery across multiple environments. Marcus was selected as the team leader for one of the primary operational units, a responsibility that required him to coordinate not just with his immediate team, but also with other units participating in the exercise. The complexity was far greater than anything he had experienced during his assessment training, and the stakes felt correspondingly higher. This exercise will test everything you've learned over the past 4 months, Master Chief Sullivan explained during the pre-exercise briefing. Success requires integration of individual skills, team coordination, and strategic thinking under conditions that closely approximate real operational environments. The exercise began with a complex infiltration scenario that required Marcus's team to approach their objective area undetected while maintaining communication with other operational elements. Marcus found himself managing multiple priorities simultaneously: navigation, team movement, equipment management, communication protocols, and tactical security. His systematic thinking training proved invaluable for organizing these multiple priorities. Instead of becoming overwhelmed by the complexity, Marcus was able to create mental frameworks that helped him track all essential elements while remaining flexible enough to adapt when situations changed. Team 2. This is Team Leader Marcus. He communicated over secure radio during the infiltration phase. We're approaching Checkpoint Alpha on schedule, requesting updated intelligence on target area conditions. The response came back immediately. Team Leader Marcus. Intelligence indicates possible complications at the primary objective. Recommend shifting to alternate approach route. Marcus quickly analyzed the tactical implications of the intelligence update. The alternate approach route would require additional time and resources, but it would also provide better security for the team. He made the decision to shift approaches, then coordinated with other team leaders to ensure his change didn't affect their operations. All teams, Team Leader Marcus switching to alternate approach. This will delay our timeline by approximately 30 minutes. Adjust coordination accordingly. The ability to make quick decisions while considering their impact on broader mission success was exactly the kind of skill the exercise was designed to test. Marcus's performance throughout the 3-week exercise demonstrated that he could maintain strategic awareness while managing tactical details under extended stress. When the exercise concluded, the candidates participated in extensive debriefs that analyzed every aspect of their performance. Marcus received consistently positive feedback from instructors and fellow candidates alike. Your leadership during the extended exercise was exemplary, Master Chief Sullivan told Marcus during his individual evaluation. You maintained situational awareness across multiple operational elements while making decisions that supported overall mission success. Sullivan paused, looking directly at Marcus with an expression that suggested he was about to share important information. Based on your performance throughout the preparatory program, I'm recommending you for immediate advancement to basic underwater demolition/SEAL training. Your class begins in 6 weeks. Marcus felt a surge of excitement and pride, but also a deep sense of responsibility. SEAL training was legendary for its difficulty, and he understood that his real challenges were still ahead. Master Chief, I'm honored by the recommendation. I understand that Bud/S will test everything I've learned and more. It will, Sullivan agreed, but you've demonstrated the mental attributes and leadership capabilities necessary for success. Your physical conditioning has improved dramatically, and your systematic approach to problem solving will serve you well during the most challenging phases.